What are your relationships, your working relationships with directors, or what's your preferred type of a working relationship with a director?
It's probably a cliche, but the thought of the editorial process being kind of the last rewrite of a script. And so I think it's really important to have a director who's understands that. Because I think, a lot of times, like newer directors maybe don't, right? And they sort of think it's the movie and they put it together and it works.
And it has to be exactly the way.
I wrote it and then I shot it and then we put it in order and then that's your job. And you put it in order and then we're done. And I think it's sort of this actual process of like, well, now let's actually examine what your movie is now that you've shot it. Let's actually talk about what you have and what works and what could work better and how can we make it work better. And actually think about rearranging and losing things. And, and people who are open to that, I think makes for a much better relationship on my end. And I'd like to think makes for a better movie, but
yeah. I guess I've been lucky because like these last 2 features I've cut, it's been, the expectation has been that we're going to spend a long time rewriting the film. And it might help that these are directors that have in some cases, a couple of features under their belt. Last year, I guess the year before, but we had it out last year, I cut Man from Reno with Dave Boyle. And I think he's like 5 or 6 features in at this point.
Right.
And he comes into it like knowing we're going to spend a long time on this. We're going to do different versions of this film.
Right.
He's not. There's no illusion of like we did it perfectly on set.
Right.
And same thing with Jennifer on Advantageous. She knows it's a process, and we spent a year in post on this one, which part of it was like we're really heavy on visual effects and it takes a long time, especially when you don't have a budget. We got some budget, but no. But yeah, I think I've personally been lucky to not fallen in that situation.
Yeah. And not to say that I have. Not if you look me up on IMDb, like they're like which one, But it's just I think that there are different expectations from different directors, and I think being open and leaving like a year as compared to saying, well, we shot it in July and the Sundance deadline's in September, so you have a month and a half to edit the movie.
Normally, I feel like the director has to be super hands-on with documentary. That was my experience up until this project. And this film, they were not in the edit room that often because we had 2 directors. One lives in Memphis and one is in LA. But he's sort of the kind of director that likes to walk in and like react to something. Like I will like just make something whatever I feel like, and then he comes in and goes, that's great or that's horrible. And like that was kind of his style, so that was new for me. And I've worked with a lot of directors who are much more like in the room, and so I don't know, I think both are interesting in different ways. I'm not sure if I have a preference.
You don't really get to choose.
Right. Exactly. I just go with whatever.
Yeah, I think relationships with directors, especially I think in documentaries, because a lot of the writing is done in post. It really varies depending on their style of directing. The Racing Extinction actually, we had a pretty big post team. We had like 3 editors and 3 assistant editors, and the director. He's very visual, but he was a little less hands-on in the actual edit. But we also had a writer, Mark Monroe, who's an amazing writer. So that was really interesting negotiating, who's responsible for what part of the story, because you had the director and the writer and the editor all making choices, and it was this interesting negotiation.
Yeah, ours was a similar situation.
Did Mark work on?
No, we had 2 directors, and one. The guy that lives in Memphis, Robert Gordon, is mainly a writer. He's done a lot of films, but he's a novelist. And so he did a lot of the words part of it.
Yeah. Where they look at like a paper edit.
Like mapping it out and that kind of thing.
Yeah, which was the thing that, back in the film days, a lot more common because you didn't want to spend all that time, going through the film. They would cut it, do it basically a paper edit, and I feel like when you work with the writer, it's more like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
But as a director that edits, I actually find that you can edit a lot quicker, because you shot it, and at least I do, like I shoot it with the edit in mind, and so I kind of know what I'm looking for as soon as I go back, and most of the time it was actually just trying to find the shots that I remember doing. So.